Hey, good evening. Here we are in the middle of July, reading Dharma together. What better thing to do? Okay, we got this cool stuff. Let's start with our chant as usual. Happy Bastille Day, yay! And happy Spain. In order that all sentient beings may attain Buddhahood, from my heart I take refuge in the three jewels. In order that all sentient beings may attain Buddhahood, from my heart I take refuge in the three jewels. In order that all sentient beings may attain Buddhahood, from my heart I take refuge in the three jewels. Whatever the virtues of the many fields of knowledge, all the steps in the path of omniscience, may these arise in the clear mirror of intellect. O Manjushri, please accomplish this. Good evening and welcome. I think we're on page 264, 265, one of those two. Okay, how about on 264 in the middle? Normally we don't notice tiny sounds, but when meditating with familiarization over a long period of time, on occasion you'll very clearly experience momentary sounds like that of your own heart beating, which we don't normally hear when we're doing other things. When we do this, this is a sign that conceptualization has subsided. Once it has subsided, various sensations and appearance and experiences continually arise. Once you brought your respiration to a pace that's slow and gentle, that is enough. You don't need to make the breath faster, slower. You don't need to make, you don't need to breathe more quickly. Be gently with your mind relaxed and happily settled. After you've practiced a lot in that way, when your practice of shamatha is going well, then sounds like that of the wind, cars, airplanes, and human voices will be experienced inside. When you focus outside, outer appearances will be unimpeded and luminous like a drawing made of rainbow. Then, when you look at visual objects such as mountains, rivers, snow, sky gardens, and forests, they will appear as though luminous and empty. Meanwhile, when you look inwardly, it will seem as though everything is of the nature of emptiness and luminosity, but nothing to be seen. When you meditate on the union of these two, outer and inner, all sounds will be experienced from within. This comes from a great deal of shamatha meditation. If you've not yet reached even just a single pointed stage, you won't understand these things. From shamatha, you go to the single pointed yoga, and you eventually progress to the yoga of one taste. And the yoga of non meditation is the way to progress. Mudra. So you have to get to the single pointed yoga, right? The first of the four yogas. This is a practice for arriving at shamatha, the single pointed yoga. So we have to understand these things, which I explained earlier. Another sign of progress is that you can remember events from previous lifetimes or else from a long time ago in this lifetime that you'd completely forgotten. We all experience that, right? Memories, long forgotten memories from the past come up, not necessarily invited. When you're cultivating shamatha, it's possible for the memory of them to return. We read this last time. You realized you lent somebody a book. That's pretty profound. What a funny example. Anyway, Vipas says, please doubt the mistake of thinking that self-immersion, spontaneous effulgence, and many memories showing up directly are all just about the same. Differentiating those experiences, I guess. Right now, for us, self-emergent spontaneous effulgence could mean memories from your many past lives in this context. Being able to remember clearly things you did in an earlier part of this life, having that memory reawakened is what having many thoughts showing up directly refers to. But this can happen even to those who have not yet practiced meditation. We can have all sorts of memories about things we did in the past, and those are not self-emergent spontaneous effulgences, but rather just many memories showing up directly, i.e., from this lifetime, as opposed to prior self-emergent spontaneous effulgence means remembering distinct events from your past lives. Sometimes this can indeed happen, and it's coming from the root of practice. But then there's also just the reawakening of memories from the earlier part of this life. Another method is to focus on an image, such as the form of a deity or the body of the Buddha, which is kind of shamatha with a sign. And is a practice, i.e., a common practice for us Buddhists. For this, you first prepare a painted scroll of the Buddha's body, not too large or small, not larger than a cubit and not smaller than a handspan in height. Who knows what a cubit is? Okay. It should be clear, but not shiny, in a relaxed, joyful way. Focus on that. Not too close or far away. A distance of about the length of an ox or a yoke. Sorry, of an ox yoke, which is about 6 foot, right? 18 inches is a cubit. All right, thank you. If it's far away, thoughts will be more scattered. If the image is too large, that will cause thoughts to scatter. The image will be more scattered, or if too close, the thoughts will scatter. Having a smaller object is a method for drawing thoughts inward. In the stage of generation practice and the samadhi of generating the deity, we focus on very tiny visualizations, such as the seed syllables inside the samadhi sattva. We have the jnana sattva and the samadhi sattva. But they must be very clear. These are powerful means to withdraw the mind inward, but if the physical visual object is too small so that you cannot see it clearly, it's hard to focus on it, so this is not good. Also, the object of meditation should not be fluttering due to wind or moving about, but should be stable. There are extensive explanations of the many benefits of practicing shamatha this way in Samadhi Raja Sutra, but this is a rough account of the reasons for practicing in this way. So in that sutra, the Buddha talks about focusing on the body of the Buddha and meditating on cultivating, basically an absorption type meditation. First, this method serves to calm the mind, and second, focusing on the body of the Buddha develops a state of mind of intense clarity, so it serves very well for both the practice of shamatha and the stage of generation. When you focus on the image of the body, Buddha's body at the beginning, focus your gaze on the coil of hair between the Buddha's eyebrows. Traditionally, a Buddha had all these major and minor marks, and one of them is a coil of hair between the eyebrows, where the third eye would be. When you get bored or dull, shift your gaze to different parts of the body, such as the eyes, nose, arms, legs, and implements. Then you can also focus on the whole body, and again, narrow in on specific parts of his body. And this is helpful if you're doing any sort of visualization, bhajan, or visualization practice, to know that there's these different ways of working with visualization. You can either focus in on different parts of the form, or you can try to see the whole form at once. It's a method to tame your mind. Sometimes when your mind becomes stable and thoughts have subsided, then even if you close your eyes, you will still see the image mentally. And that's another phase of visualization practice where the image becomes internalized. There was a shepherd boy who became a disciple of Milarepa. Luke Zirepa, cotton-clad shepherd who later became a Mahasiddha when he was looking after his flock of sheep, he encountered Milarepa and asked him to teach him meditation. Miller instructed him to visualize on the tip of your nose an image of the Buddha. So I think that's too close, according to uh, this author. May remain there single pointedly and then come back to me. So he went away, found the wall of blue, and while leaning against it with his body straight in his hands in meditation posture, he meditated on a tiny image of the Buddha. After some time, he forgot. And 7 days went by. Boom, he entered some sort of samadhi. He was a shepherd, and his parents and other relatives were worried that he became lost. They looked for him everywhere. What about the flock? And eventually came to Milarepa and asked whether their boy had come here. Milarepa told them that their son had come to learn how to meditate and taught him to visualize the Buddha, and then he had left. I asked how long this was happening. He replied it had been about 7 days. Eventually they found him, but he seemed to be zoned out with his eyes downcast. When they touched him, they aroused him and asked what he had been doing. He replied that he had been meditating. Isn't that what meditation is about? I asked, commenting that they hadn't. Sorry, is that what meditation is about? They asked, commenting that they hadn't seen him for 7 days. He replied that he just sat down to meditate. From his perspective, only a moment had gone by, but his mindfulness had been lost, and 7 days had gone by. So, as opposed to this being the absorption state of the first jhana, this was sort of a zombie state, I guess. This happened several times, so they told him they couldn't look after him anymore, for this had brought them much distress, so he should return to Milarepa. Shepard reported back to Milarepa that he focused on shocking his body, but he lost mindfulness without any sense of the passage of time. Only afterward, when he saw how the sun had moved, did he recognize that time had passed. When he entered meditation, it was evening, and when the clarity of his mindfulness was restored, it was morning. Only in that way could he believe that time had passed. Milarepa told him, this is called stagnant shamatha. It's not a sign of having achieved shamatha, nor a virtue of having received the path, only with something that should or shouldn't happen. But if you revive it through vividness of attention, this will help you in the practice of vipassana. As an analogy, just as the sun rises gradually, so do the signs of the path of meditation occur only gradually. You should not think they happen all of a sudden. When you meditate, signs of the qualities of the path arise, but you shouldn't think stagnant shamatha is something excellent. Now, if you can remain with me for 12 years, 12 years devoted to the practice of Vipassana, then you can report on your progress in Vipassana. If you can't do that, then you won't be able to give such a report. So 12 years to accomplish Vipassana. Okay. Sign up. Who's going to sign up for that? 12 years. It's been like many more than 12 years, right? Shepherd asked Milarepa to guide him, saying, I enjoy meditating. With thanks, please teach me. Later, he became a great Mahasiddha, but for the years in between, he had difficulty controlling his mind. Whether for 2 or 3 days, or for 5 or 6 days, he would lose mindfulness. Later, he wrote in his autobiography how he practiced, what kind of experiences he had, and how Milarepa corrected him. Those are examples of practices of shamatha, but the sign and the stages of practice on that basis are set forth definitively in the sutras and treatises as the 9 stages of mental stillness, or 9 attentional states by which one engages samadhi. But we are not able to practice all of them now. For now, the first 3 stages of mental stillness are important, so they should be known. They are directed engagement, continual engagement, and resurgent engagement. For shamatha, these are extremely important. Interesting that he focuses on the first 3 as opposed to the first 4 or some other segment of the 9. When you begin practicing shamatha, conceptualization seems to increase. In fact, thoughts are always arising, but we don't take charge of them or recognize them. But when we practice shamatha, We can clearly recognize how many thoughts come up and how the mind works as conceptualization increases. This seems to arise as unhappiness or as though we are being tossed about in a great storm. Everyone experiences many of these kinds of powerful thoughts, which are unlike anything they've experienced before. When they practice shamatha, they may feel discouraged, thinking they're really good at, really poor at meditation, rather than that they'll never make any progress. Then they should seek advice from a qualified Lama who will tell them that this is a sign of experience. Those thoughts were occurring all along, but they weren't recognized. The Lama will tell them that this is the meditative experience of recognizing thoughts that comes once you were practicing. I personally have had a lot of experience with that. He is not alone there. When I would meditate, thoughts would rise up strongly. I found it very difficult when I was practicing shamatha retreat for 6 months while sealed inside a mud hut. That phase of the meditative experience of recognizing thoughts happened to me just like that. But if you don't meditate, you won't recognize thoughts. When I came to Lama Jorpa to request guidance in my meditative practice, he first gave me a practice to purify the body, speech, and mind. If one failed to pass the test related to that, then he would not grant the instructions on investigating the origin, location, and destination of the mind. Too bad he didn't tell us what the test was for that. That would be. When I did succeed in that, then he guided me for several months in acquiring into the origin, location, and destination of the mind. Then he taught me the triad of stillness, movement, and awareness, after which he introduced me to pristine awareness, saying, Lama Karma, this is pristine awareness, and pristine awareness, this is Lama Karma. No, pristine awareness, triad. He introduced me to pristine awareness, saying, now your meditation is this. So he pointed it out precisely with his finger. Then during the 6 months in the sealed meditation hut, I solely practiced shamatha for 2 of those months. I didn't even recite my daily commitments. Most religious Dharma practitioners in the Tibetan world, they accumulate a lot of commitments of practices that they're supposed to do, little sadhanas, chants, things like that. And they keep them with them. They have a little stack of their practices that they commit to do every day. After about 7 days, I became extremely depressed with the amount of conceptualization that was coming up, one thought after another, relentlessly. When I recognized that, then all through the night, with my eyes wide open, the thoughts would arise constantly, and that was torture. So he reached a stage where thoughts just like went wild and kept them up all night long. I thought I'm making this suffering for myself. I can't handle it. If this is the kind of difficulty that arises, if one meditates, it would be better just to try to enjoy myself. It would be better to do something else, to recite mani mantras, offer the regular Gana chakras, perform rituals, and meditate on the stage of Chinmaya. Later, when the Lama came to see me and told me this was happening to all along, but in the past you weren't aware of it, conceptualization is occurring constantly. Now, due to your practice and cultivating shamatha, you're recognizing what's going on in your mind. This is called the meditative experience of recognizing thoughts. This is the first barrier to jhana. If you don't cross over this hurdle, if you try to avoid it, since you won't be able to recognize thoughts, your practice will develop only partially. So you need this in order to recognize thoughts, which we have to assume means more than just noticing that you're thinking. It has to have, right? It must indicate some deeper level of recognition. Only about 1 in 100 can get through this. It's difficult. If you can meditate, then you will become adept in coping with these naturally arising feelings and experiences. If you don't meditate, or if you meditate for an hour or 2 each day, but then rest and become distracted, you won't progress. That's encouraging, huh? Since most of us meditate for that sort of period of time or less. You have to meditate single pointedly after you have sealed your hut. You have to meditate, when you meditate single pointedly, then the first meditative experience of jhana, the experience of movement, occurs when conceptualization bursts forth like a cascading mountain brook. You will encounter its essential nature in the Mahamudra instruction known as the Ganges. The Indian Mahasiddha Tilopa said that for novices, thoughts flow like a cascading mountain brook. We usually use the analogy of a waterfall. These thoughts weren't absent previously, but you weren't aware of them. Once you cross over the first hurdle, then gradually over time you must reach the meditative experience of recovering from preceding thoughts. Then, little by little, they gradually withdraw. Now you have recognized thoughts, you must definitely cross over this hurdle. If you cannot cross this hurdle, then no matter what practices or rituals you perform, fine experiences will never come. So this is the first experience. Getting over this first hurdle of recognizing thoughts, or have rather, little by little, them gradually withdrawing, reducing slightly. For 6 months, I focused solely on shamatha and the seal thoughts. Sometimes various thoughts would arise a bit more strongly. Sometimes the practice would be pleasant, and I had all kinds of experiences. When I emerged from my meditation hut after 6 months, all appearances manifested as never before. Outer appearances, the grass, rocks, crops, trees, and mountains arose. But when assessed with mindfulness and introspection, I saw them differently. I reported this to my Lama because my Lama had gained the realization in this like space. He understood immediately and quoted the saying from Jetson Milarepa. Please doubt the mistake of thinking that being affixed to the nectar of shamatha in meditation that has taken hold of the indwelling as one's own place is all just about the same. So, same. Those two are not the same. So he told me that I had not yet taken hold of the eternal kingdom of the indwelling mind, but that some say that meditation that takes hold of the eternal kingdom of the indwelling and being stuck to the nectar of shamatha are the same. Then Lama Doljorpa said, right now, whatever you see, whatever you feel, whatever you look at is rising as an experience in the nature of clear luminosity and emptiness. So if whatever you look upon, you remain without moving, with your mind completely unwavering, then whatever you see will have the aspect of clear luminosity. So you will see everything as having become empty. And a state of mind will arise that realizes things to be completely devoid of true existence. Okay, emptiness. Once he had said this, my Lama laughed and said, you've been practicing shamatha quite a lot, so you're fixed to the nectar of shamatha. But as for taking hold of the eternal kingdom of the indwelling in the future, with respect to all of this, if you continue to meditate a great deal, then you will come upon something like that. And at that time, you will take hold of the eternal kingdom. Pretty theistic language. The eternal kingdom. Right now, your shamatha has become affixed to its nectar. You have achieved a partial degree of vipassana, enough to recognize it, but it's not actual definitive vipassana. Because, as I said, when you recognize this self-cognizing awareness, which is luminous and free of grasping, as spontaneous actualization, you have only then reached the end of the single pointed vipassana. When your mind is clear and free of grasping, then from the perspective of your state of mind, it is not holding on to anything at all. And when you've actually seen that this is an aspect of vipassana from that point in. But at this point, actual definitive vipassana has not risen. So this is an aspect of vipassana, but not the real thing. That was my way of meditating. I've been asked to speak about this, so I have. My Lama told me from now on I should not let my mind wander at any time. I would sustain my mindfulness and introspection without distraction 24 hours every day. From that point onward, for 5 years, I didn't engage in any studies of obscurative dharmas but focused solely on sustaining the mindfulness and introspection I had developed earlier. But but just 5 years of such, for just 5 years of such practice, my mind would still become distracted at night, but I was able to maintain continuous mindfulness throughout the whole day. During this time, at a certain point, I served as the scribe for Pegyal Lingpa as he was narrating his mind treasures, and according to my Lama's instructions, I would examine how many lines I could go before my mind would wander, how many pages I could go before being distracted. I would observe how long I could maintain mindfulness during one session with him without becoming distracted, and how many steps I could go before my mind would wander off after a cessation that had finished. And I was walking. I had a long way to walk home, for I lived up in the mountains. Sometimes I would go by car with my Lama, and sometimes by foot. On all such occasions, I had no other practice no other practice than to maintain undistracted mindfulness, called staring down the face of mindfulness. A neat phrase that is. It relies upon mindfulness and introspection. After about 5 years from the time I awoke in the morning till I went to bed at night, I was able to sustain continuous mindfulness of pristine awareness. It's interesting that translators have inserted pristine awareness. Let's see discussion of these soon. So this was probably the medium stage of the single pointed yoga. It was not the great stage. At that point, I was able to experience luminosity not only during the day, but also through the night. Sometimes while dreaming at night, I would recognize dreams that had been aroused from afflictive habitual tendencies. Dreams would arise as the clear light. Sometimes I'd be able to observe the stages of dissolution. For us right now, when we fall asleep, our minds dissolve into the substrate consciousness. We dream, and apart from that time, when we awake from meditation, we don't recognize the stages of dissolution or reemergence of the dark near attainment. So let's see. For us right now, when we fall asleep, our minds dissolve into the substrate. We dream, and apart from the time when we wake up, we don't understand what's going on. Also, the stages of sleep. When you practice shamatha a lot, you can recognize the stages of dissolution and reemergence, the dark near attainment, the white appearance, and the red emergence. So, this is a traditional way that shamatha, the accomplishment of true shamatha is gauged as being able to be aware through your sleep, including both your REM dream sleep and your deep sleep. And what you experience is these three stages of like manifestation of mind and world that when the mind is emerging from the clear light, it goes in these stages in reverse. And then when it's dissolving into the clear light, it dissolves in these stages. So that happens at death in a big way. It's stages, and it happens in sleep in a small way. And when meditation is brought to its culmination, it happens in that way as well. Particularly if you're doing the inner yoga practices, the six dharmas of Naropa. You bring the energy into the central channel and so forth. Let's see. And these are the stages. Dark near attainment. So there's like a darkness, like a nighttime with no moon. Then there's a white appearance, which is like a nighttime with a full moon. And then there's a red emergence, which is like the redness that happens at dusk. And those are the stages of reemergence. So when we dissolve into death, we go from the red emergence to the white appearance and the dark near attainment. Anyway, when I was about to wake up, I could observe all their dream appearances dissolving back into the substrate consciousness. Then when mindfulness was restored, or to the substrate, sorry, when mindfulness was restored in appearances, of course, mindfulness emerged. I could observe the gradual arising of daytime appearances. So when shamatha is cultivated, it is useful for us in that way. That was my way of meditating. Useful for us in that way. I think we would maybe say it's helpful in gaining the ability to be conscious during sleep, maybe doing dream yoga, sleep yoga. For ordinary beings, whenever appearances arise throughout the day, they don't recognize pristine awareness, so they're distracted to appearances. They're caught up in conceptualization, and visual propensities are stored in their substrates. When they fall asleep, all the appearances to their 8 configurations of consciousness dissolve inwardly, and they go into the dark near attainment. So that's the last stage of the dissolution before sleep and before death. This is the very same dark near attainment that you will enter while on the path. It is what happens at death also. So when you enter into the path, you experience this dissolution of samsara consciousness as you emerge from samsara. But right now, while we're practicing, after we've crossed beyond the dark near attainment of the substrate, then from the reversal of that dark near attainment, mindfulness is restored and subtle consciousness and appearances emerge. Dreams emerge the whole night long, drawing on habitual propensities stored in the substrate, and one sees those dream appearances. Then, when they are worn out and the duration of dream appearances is finished, they dissolve back into the dark near attainment. And when the dark near attainment reverses sequence, our current appearances arise from it again. So this goes back and forth such that we're deluded during the dream state. If we don't recognize pristine awareness, we're deluded during the waking state. The Buddhas realized that appearances in the dream state and waking state are both devoid of true existence, and they recognize that dreams in the waking state are equally delusional. So they realize this without delusion. We don't realize that. We don't realize that. We may think we're deluded in the dream state and that nothing is truly existent, but during the waking state, we think everything is real and truly existent. But Buddhas know that all our currently appearing phenomena are deceptive. When you come to know that, then with the practices of the path on the basis of your shamatha, you use the awareness of vipassana, and you'll be able to experience many objects of consciousness with pristine awareness. Now, we should probably abbreviate the presentation. Whenever we meditate, there are 2 very important instruments to be put to use: mindfulness and introspection. When we first focus our attention on an image such as that of the Buddha, when it appears in its entirety before the mind, and the mind quickly comes to it, this is called directed mental engagement. Maintaining our attention on that appearance without abandoning it is called mindfulness. There are 2 meanings of mindfulness. On the one hand, it refers to recollecting past events, including actions we've done long, long ago. In that case, we call it remembering. But here we're not using that mental faculty. In the context of shamatha, mindfulness refers to sustaining our focus, for example, on the image of the deity, which is appearing in its entirety without letting it become distracted. In addition, it enables us to be aware of the vivid and empty aspects of the object without slipping into laxity or excitation. This is mindfulness. When we are counting our breaths, it is with mindfulness that we sustain our attention as we count 1, 2, 3, taking extreme care not to lose count. When our attention strays and we lose track of the count, this is due to the loss of mindfulness. Then mental engagement means the object disappearing to the mind. When the object is appearing, but our attention is once again distracted, the mental faculty which we recognize this fault is called introspection. Mindfulness and introspection are our most important tools. So these are the 2 major aspects of shamatha: mindfulness, trempa in Tibetan, sati in Sanskrit, smriti in Sanskrit, and sati in Pali. And then introspection, samprajanya, Sanskrit, Sheshan in Tibetan, Sampanyanya in Pali. and usually translated in various ways: introspection, investigation, alertness, awareness. There are also two distinguishing qualities of our mind. So those are the two main qualities of shamatha, and then the mind is said to have two main qualities. The quality of mind by which we clearly distinguish the particular characteristics of external objects to which we direct our attention, such as identifying, oh, that's a light, that's a painting, and so on, as well as using investigation and analysis to identify individual characteristics of those objects, such as that is white, that is red, that is black, and so on, may be called self-cognizing and self-illuminating. Quality of mind in Tibetan. Rangi, Rangsal. Rang is self, Rik is knowing or cognizing, self-cognizing, and then Sal, pronounced Sal, spelled Gsal, is illuminating, self-illuminating. Along with that, the part of the mind that experiences the onset of the thoughts that identify individual qualities, such as color, is called introspection. So the mind has these two aspects as well as shamatha. As uh, these two aspects are sort of correspond to this to the main two aspects of shamatha you just mentioned. And he gives the Tibetan for introspection, sheshin. This is the precise place where we point out the name introspection. That's a little unclear to me. Um, when I think he means like when we talk about the two qualities of mind, two aspects of mind, this is when we point out this quality of introspection. Traditionally, the mind is said to be clear and aware. So, the aware part he describes as the first quality that identifies, distinguishes particular characteristics of external objects. And the other part of mind is the clarity. Identifies individual qualities such as color is called introspection. It's a little unclear his distinction of these two qualities of mind. Normally, the two qualities are described as clarity. That which is mind is that which is clear and aware or knowing, and the clarity is reflective. So this quality of the mind reflecting whatever comes in front of it without obstruction, clearly reflecting, clearly appearing. Which references the way that perception is understood in the Sautrantic school, where phenomena cast their aspect into the faculty of consciousness. And that's called an appearance. The appearing object is what appears in the faculty as the aspect of the external object. So in Sautrantika, there are external objects, and there are these internal representations of them called aspects that appear there. Therefore, with a focus on experience, when you meditate, there will come an experience where there are no thoughts at all, where amazingly they have all been pacified. You can experience this. So he's saying you can experience no thought. We debate about that sometimes. Can you actually experience no thoughts, or will there always be thoughts? He says you can come to a place where there are none. Amazingly, they have all been pacified. At the same time, in order to be able to remain in this peace, you need strong enthusiasm. So that's usually included as the third quality of shamatha, strong enthusiasm. Ardency in the early tradition where the Satipatthana Sutra, the Sutra of the Four Foundations of Mindfulness, lists these three qualities. And there the famous translator who translated this first, yana, used the term clear comprehension. appreciation for samprajanya, and mindfulness and ardence. And here we have enthusiasm. Whether meditation goes well or not depends on mindfulness introspection. If you're someone whose mindfulness is stable, introspection is sharp, and if you actually do meditate, then when you meditate, your meditation will go quite well, even if mindfulness is present. If introspection lapses, then our mindfulness will not be restored to its object once it's been distracted elsewhere. So that's the function of the two mindfulness. It's focused on the object, and when it veers away, introspection notices and brings it back. So to some extent, introspection functions all the time, watching whether the mind is mindful or not. Once it has been distracted elsewhere, so you will not be able to attain the third attentional state of resurgent engagement. Sort of this idea of uh, focused attention arising spontaneously based on the setting up of mindfulness and introspection. When relying on mindfulness and introspection, you're able to sustain, on page 276, you're able to sustain your attention for a while. This is called continual engagement. And with resurgent engagement, you develop even greater continuity. Stages 2 and 3. At this third stage, even if you cannot remain engaged with the object continuously, you're immediately able to recognize when your mind has become distracted by a single conceptualization, such as drifting off into memories of going to India, visiting Bodh Gaya, and so on. Interesting examples, not ones that we would probably use, but that's what's on his mind. That is when conceptualization flows on and on, taking your mindfulness with it. But at this stage, so interesting statement, when conceptualization flows on and on, so thoughts flowing on and on, train of thoughts pulling us away, taking mindfulness with us, where there's really this idea that whatever we're thinking about, we're mindful of. We tend to think that mindfulness is only present when we're on the chosen object, but actually, whenever we're thinking, we're mindful of what we're thinking about. It's just that we've drifted from the chosen object and we're now mindful of something else. So we call that lack of mindfulness, but it's really distracted mindfulness. Um, Let's see. At this stage of resurgent engagement, you immediately recognize with introspection your attention is straight and you bring it right back to the object. Introspection is like a shepherd, for it lurks after the mind to prevent it from being carried away by conceptualization. When the attention strays, introspection restores it again and again to the meditative object. If it's not restored, then conceptualization or thoughts would flow continuously. At the moment when the mind is settled well for a given session, it's important to stop the session. That's so painful. They always say this. Like when it's going well, you stop. I don't know anybody who does anybody here do that? Rob, are you trained well enough to do that? When it's going well, you stop.
I say more, more. Keep going. Is there more?
How long can I keep this
I actually
going?
have physical issues that make me stop.
Okay. So
Some,
that's somewhat convenient.
yeah, sometimes it's going well when that happens, and sometimes I'm distracted. But pain is a pain will make me stop.
Yeah, indeed. Shift your position. Knees. Let's see. If you don't stop before they're scattering before conceptualization has had a chance to arise in a stream, then stability will not arise. So if you keep meditating to the point where they're scattering and conceptualization arises in a stream, then ruin your ability to actually achieve stability, interestingly. Right now, our practice of meditation is not stable until the mind is stabilized and conceptualization no longer infiltrates. You need to correct for scattering until conceptualization doesn't arise at all for 5 or 10 minutes. I love that he says just that amount of time. That's like in the ballpark, vaguely, maybe. or even half an hour. Now is out of the ballpark, but you should have short sessions again and again. For if you do that, conceptualization won't as easily carry you away. Many sessions of short duration, that is what has been taught by the supreme siddhas of the past, and it is important. One might think it's important to have long sessions, but unless one's meditation is in really stable, coarse, or subtle undercurrents of conceptualization, will continue to flow like water moving beneath grass, hay, or husks of grain. That's such a neat image of there being, like, I remember seeing these fields that were sort of flooded, and there's like grass on top, and you don't see any water, but like you step in it, it's like water there. And then you notice there's like water flowing through the grass under the grass, you know? And that's the subtle undercurrent of thoughts is like big time, really strong, really powerful happening. We don't discover that until we get through the outer coarse layer of discursiveness. Um, Attention will stray as if it had been carried away by a thief. You need to recognize whether or not your mindfulness is stable. And when you restore it, um, and you're able to stop conceptualization, it's like waves that subside back into the ocean, or like a rainbow fading back into the sky. Once you have recognized the nature of your mind, it's best if conceptualization simply disappears into that fundamental character. Okay, that sounds good. I agree, that's the best. It's important to properly recognize stillness. If you don't, then the proximate enemies, laxity and dullness will arise. So recognize stillness. It's like noticing the still aspect of mind, right? Identifying that aspect. You need to recognize movements of the mind. By recognizing stillness, you understand movement in a different way. If you don't, then undercurrents of thoughts will flow. Otherwise it's just a mush. Likewise, you need to recognize awareness. What's experiencing this? So that triad. If you don't, you'll be lost in confusion. Apart from staring down the face of appearances, there is no other practice. So this strange phrase, staring down the face of appearances. He's going to talk about that more. So let's talk about it then. Let's see. Whether walking, relaxing, standing, or lying down, these are the four postures that the Buddha established. Gather them on. This is what it means to practice virtue without sessions or in between. So just continuous practice. No idea of there being practice and then not practice. There is no period between sessions. There are neither sessions nor post-meditation sessions. When you're practicing staring down the face of appearances during sessions, you are gluing yourself to meditative experience. So with regard to post-meditation, it is not as though there is one and then a second, meaning it is not as though there is meditation and then there's post-meditation. That is something different. Blending those together during both you're practicing staring down the face of pristine awareness. We're staring down the face of appearance. So let's share. What do we think this phrase means? Any ideas? Staring down the face of appearance. What are appearances?
Our experiences.
Everything we experience. Sometimes called movement. Appearances are movement. Movement are appearances. It's a little unclear, like does one contain the other, but they're pretty synonymous.
So
Sorry.
how I interpreted that was kind of like that phrase about that meditation instruction about being like a small child in a shrine room where you just sort of let it wash over without commentary, be, you know, almost, in awe. Um, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
to, to,
But
to,
but
to not make what's happening about yourself.
but that analogy is a little unclear to me if the child like has the gets overwhelmed by the
Well, not so
um
much overwhelmed, but just entranced.
right, but the staring down has a little bit seems to have to me to have a little bit more of an active engagement, like
Yeah,
really recognizing, the
yeah,
child, it's more like naive seems.
yeah. But
And this to me, sorry.
I'm sorry, but that's what it reminded me of. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Like the place to start with.
yeah, basically the point, what I'm really, it's not about me. It's not about myself. It's like I'm not adding my thing to it.
Hmm.
It's- There's like, I'm not labeling. I'm not, other than going like, wow.
Yeah. What else? Anyone else? Staring down the face of appearances.
So I don't think it's quite like this, but a couple times I've had that experience where really quiet, but it's almost like I can, I don't know if the word is hearing, but thoughts just like crackling, like bubbling up, but incoherent. Like,
Mhm.
are those thoughts? And I'm like, really, it's a weird sensation. I've only had it happen a couple times, but it's like, oh, there's always thoughts like just bubbling going on in the background.
Yeah.
For me, it felt like what's usually described as recognizing thoughts. Just like as they're arising, you're seeing them
Mhm.
and you're staying with them. You're like you're not getting drawn by them, sucked in, but
Mhm.
you're staring at them like the shrine that the child might be staring at or something. You're like looking at what is the nature of thought, sort of thing. And we know that when we do that with thoughts, they dissolve. Become powerless. When we genuinely look at them in that way, they become powerless.
They like lose a bit of their volume
Yeah,
when that happens. They get thinner.
skinny,
Yeah,
skinny thoughts.
yeah. They kind of ghost by.
Right. They slink by.
Yeah.
Teaching on how to practice a session. Oh, okay. Whether our meditation sessions are short or long, they should be comprised of three stages: the preparation, the actual meditation, the conclusion. Preparation is the generation of bodhicitta. The actual meditation is non-referential. The actual meditation session is to experience a non-referential state of mind, and the conclusion is the dedication. Preparation, the generation of bodhicitta, is virtues. Your practice is imbued with skillful means. Regarding the non-referential actual meditation, neither thoughts nor the roughness of thoughts, as it were, arise within the meditation. That's a high bar indeed. The roughness of thoughts, that's like the sort of subtle impact of thoughts that they have on stillness, presumably. The mind settles in its own nature, or awareness settles in its own nature. Interesting the way he says that first is the mind settles in its own nature. And then he's like, well, the, the aspect of mind called awareness settles in its own nature, meaning that there can still be movement, presumably, that's just not, doesn't disturb, which means that it's not sullied by thoughts of the past, present, and future, but is perfectly pure. The mind's essential nature is empty, and its manifest nature is not simply vacuous, but is luminous. So these are the two usual qualities of mind: clear or empty, and aware or luminous. So there is a union of emptiness and luminosity. When it arises vividly, it will not succumb to laxity and excitation. And this is called the non-referential actual meditation. Non-referential. Whatever roots of virtue you practice, the end of the session should not be obstructed with negative thoughts. After you finish practicing, continue with authentic prayers of dedication of all of your virtue for the sake of all sentient beings throughout space. This is like pouring a drop of water into the ocean so that until the ocean dries up, your drop of water being mixed with the ocean will not be extinguished. Likewise, your roots of virtue will not be extinguished until enlightenment is achieved, but will increase more and more. So enlightenment in this analogy is like the ocean. Longchenpa spoke of these three things to cherish as you traverse the path of enlightenment, and whether your sessions are long or short, they must be imbued with these three, presumably going back to the root of the preparation, the actual meditation, and the conclusion. Within the triad of teaching, listening, and practicing meditation, which is presumably a reference to the three prajnas of hearing, contemplating, and meditating. We have finished teaching and listening, so now it's time to meditate. Arouse the aspiration by all sentient beings throughout space, achieve the precious state of enlightenment. So this is the bodhisattva aspiration. And to begin, engage in the ninefold cleansing of the stale winds. This is a traditional Tibetan practice of clearing the winds before we do some practice. Then there are some winds remaining that have not entered. So you want to take in the remaining winds. It's a little bit vague what that means. It seems to refer to taking them into the channels, the central. So those of you who are familiar with the vase breathing, you may proceed with that. So after clearing the breath, the stale breath, you do a little vase breathing. If you're not familiar with vase breathing, then you can simply release the remaining breath gently through the nose and the mouth after the ninefold cleanse. You may proceed. With your hands on the knees, relax your mind. Then, as it is said, if you make the auspicious form with your body, then realizations will dawn in your mind. So adopt the 7-point posture of Arochana, or if that is uncomfortable, then you can sit up straight in the Bodhisattva posture, which usually is the posture in a chair. Your entire body and mind should be relaxed, which right after saying sitting up straight, he says relaxed. And those can be considered contradictory, but there's a way of putting those together. Then offer prayers of supplication to the lineage of your lamas, finishing with this prayer: come, my precious root Guru, shining in glory. Sit atop the lotus and moon upon my crown, and your great kindness take me after you. Please grant me the cities of body, speech, and mind. So supplicate the Guru, which can either be a teacher you consider to be that, or the Buddha. Then you can visualize the one whose essential nature is your root lama in the form of a teacher, Shakyamuni, coming to be seated upon the lotus and moon above the crown of your head. So traditionally one would visualize the seat for the Buddha or teacher, which would consist of what's called a sun or a moon disk, which is like a thin sliver of sun, a thin sliver of moon. Like when you go into the deli and you get salami, it's like a round tube, and you would get a slice of salami. Here it's like there's a tube of sunshine and a tube of moonlight, and you get a slice of those and you put them on top of your head. Then call for blessings that your meditation in this session will go well. Imagine you receive blessings, your Lama melts into light, and as a ball of light enters your crown chakra, descends to the center of your heart, and finally dissolves into your heart. So a way of visualizing the energy of your Lama connection with your teacher, the Buddha, into your heart. Then imagine that the Buddha's mind and your mind become inseparable of one taste, sort of rousing confidence in your own Buddha nature. Once you've come to that point, you enter the actual meditation of your thoughts of the past as aspects of your mind and prevent them from entering. Do not usher in thoughts of the future, instead stop them. This brings your consciousness to the present. Interesting now that we have this sense of like holding back thoughts of the past and future. Don't investigate or analyze this consciousness, i.e. of the present. When practicing shamatha, this consciousness that is the dominant condition, i.e. what you call your mind. So the dominant condition is a reference to the 4 conditions in the scheme of karmic cause and effect in the Buddhist Abhidharma tradition. And the dominant condition is the sense power. So when we have a visual consciousness, the dominant condition is the eye sense faculty that resides in or near the eyeball. When we have a mental consciousness, then the sense faculty is the mind, which during its lifetime has a connection to the brain and afterwards is independent. Don't investigate. Let's see. So this consciousness, that is the dominant condition, which we would call my mind, does not have any location where it can be determined. Therefore, when you observe the essential nature of your mind, when you can't point to it, you see that it's empty. But not only is it empty, the luminosity of visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, and tactile sensations remains unimpeded. So it's empty but functioning. As Milarepa said to Rechampa, spiritual son, may this wish fulfilling jewel of the precious samadhi of luminosity and emptiness arise in your mind stream. Rechampa, my son. The mind has the two inseparable aspects of luminosity and emptiness. Its emptiness is devoid of laxity, and its luminosity is devoid of dullness. Interesting to affiliate those two qualities of mind with the two major obstacles to shamatha. So again, emptiness is devoid of laxity. So emptiness has a sharpness, sort of energetic quality to it. That is the opposite of laxity. And luminous, sorry, they're both similar, laxity and dullness. So laxity is an energetic. How are they distinguished? Laxity and dullness. I think laxity is more physical and dullness is more mental. But that's an interesting question. Let's see. Laxity and dullness are transcended. You will never quite arrive at the consciousness of the present moment that transcends origination, cessation, abiding, which is empty awareness, but you remain right there for as long as you can. That is called meditative equipoise. You will never quite arrive there, but you remain right there. Did I read that right? Laxity and dullness are transcended. You will never quite arrive at the consciousness of the present moment that transcends origination, cessation, and abiding, which is empty awareness, but you remain right there for as long as you can. That is called meditative equipoise. So arriving without arriving, but remaining. Whatever thoughts arise, simply release them. Don't try to block them, for you will never succeed. So he just told us to block thoughts of the past and the future. Now he's saying don't block them up. I guess it was different, slightly different context. Also, don't fall under the influence of autonomous stream of conceptualization, for that is delusional. Respect to these thoughts, we need to understand how to release them into their ground, their aspect of liberation. So this, in my mind, this is what recognizing thoughts is all about, and this idea of staring down the face of appearance is about, is understanding how to release thoughts by um, by this very elusive phrase, release them into their ground, which is the aspect of liberation, like bringing thoughts into their essence as mind, as not separate from mind, as not separate from the stillness aspect of mind. The ground, the mind that is unborn and unceasing, has an aspect that is utterly empty. Although all kinds of thoughts may arise from that, when thoughts have been turned around, they can be released once again within that aspect of freedom. We need to be able to give rise to a strong conviction in the state that does not identify the essential nature. Rechampa said, thoughts of the past have ceased and disappeared. Those of the future have not yet arisen. Those of the present are unidentifiable. It is called the transcendence of identification. The mind, whose essential nature is free of identification, finally leads to the Madhyamaka view, the Mahamudra view, and the view of the great perfection. implying these are synonymous. When cultivating shamatha, depending on the level of your practice, be it great, middle, or small, on the qualities of your channels and elements, and the strength of your courage, depending on these three, or how far one has advanced for some people due to the purity of their karma, it is possible for them to recognize their own pristine awareness. Depending on all of those factors, the mind that is free of thoughts of the three times is the best. And when cultivating shamatha, skipping all the parentheticals, for some people, due to the purity of karma, it's possible for them to recognize their own pristine awareness. The mind that is free of thoughts of the three times is the best. When you hear the sound of the chime that begins the meditation session falling away, settle your mind in its natural state, and from that point onward, do your best not to become distracted. Interestingly, Trungpa Rinpoche uses that technique as well. In the seminaries now, the profound treasure, he has a little section called settling in, where he says, when you hear the sound of the gong, just connect to that sound and use it as a way to bring you into meditation gradually. Meditative equipoise is said to be space-like, for it is like empty space. When you arise from meditative equipoise with your space-like, luminous, empty mind, you might think, now my session's over, so I don't need to meditate. But don't think that you're now on vacation. Between sessions, you must sustain the mindfulness of meditative equipoise and blend it with your everyday activities. You should identify your meditative and post-meditative state. Unify, sorry. When you're first practicing, you may practice for an hour of formal meditation and shorter periods of post-meditation, such as 10 minutes, which you try to blend with your meditative state. So this is interesting that it presents this progressive scheme, like 1 hour of meditation, take a 10-minute break where you try to sustain that. We might do shorter periods of time, like Alan Wallace recommends 24 minutes. Do a 24-minute session and have a 5 or 10-minute break, and then repeat. As you're able to maintain your meditative mindfulness throughout your post-meditative periods, then you should extend the post-meditative practice to 20 minutes. Interesting to extend the post-meditation, not the meditation. Extend the period where you're bringing that meditative mind into so-called post-meditation. Eventually, your training would consist of 1 hour of meditation and 1 hour of post-meditation. Gradually, you decrease the time spent in formal meditation and increase the time in post-meditative state with the increase of pliancy, which arises at the culmination of shamatha and vipassana. During all your activities of eating, washing, walking, and sleeping, you can integrate the mindfulness and meditative equipoise with your post-meditative experience. And pliancy was famously translated by Trungpa Rinpoche as thoroughly processed and synchronization. When you can indivisibly merge the two being the mindfulness of meditative equipoise with your post-meditative experience, so that they're unified, you will be able to arrive at high levels of meditation. That part was fascinating to me. So much emphasis on the post-meditative experience. In this text, the three phrases that strike the crucial points, which synthesizes all the crucial points of the great perfection. So those very most famous text in the Dzogchen tradition, probably by Garab Dorje, states that there should be no difference between meditative equipoise and the post-meditative state, and no separation between meditation sessions and between session periods. Meditative equipoise occurs during your formal sessions, and between sessions, the mind tends to wander. But if your meditative equipoise can enter into the times between sessions, then meditation persists without distraction. When the mindfulness and introspection of your meditative equipoise enters into your activities, then you've made those two periods inseparable, and no difference exists between the meditative equipoise and the post-meditative state. For siddhas of the past, if in the beginning they were meditating in Mount Hermitage and then practiced until they could successfully blend sessions in between session periods. Then, whether they were teaching disciples or wandering about in the town, it made no difference, for they had achieved stability within. If you practice gradually and reach a high level, at the beginning, page 282, you should not meditate with your eyes closed, nor should they be wide open. They should be partially open, looking out in front of you. Familiarize yourself in that way. In the future, you will be able to achieve clairvoyance, the divine eye, the eye of wisdom, and so forth. If you meditate with your eyes closed, for a while it seems better, but later you will fall towards sleep because your meditation will not have attained stability. When you achieve quite a good degree of stability, then you will be just like Milarepa, who said, when I cover my head with my shawl, I see with the distant eye. I can clearly see all the worlds. When you've taken hold of the eternal kingdom with undistracted mindfulness, then it won't make any difference whether your eyes are open or closed. But for us right now, keeping our eyes closed is not the way to practice shamatha. Now that we participate in teaching, listening, and practicing meditation, let us dedicate whatever roots of virtue we may have gained so that all sentient beings may achieve enlightenment simultaneously as one. I think he was just meaning, first I described meditation and you were listening to it. So I was teaching, you were listening, and then we practiced, as opposed to the three prajnas that I said earlier. It is written in the old textbooks that siddhas of the passive said that if you can maintain the stability of your mind or samadhi through the practice of shamatha for as long as it takes for a louse. They were plagued by louses to crawl from the top of your head to the tip of your nose. That is a few minutes. You will be able to purify instantly negative karma accumulated over 80,000 aeons. Isn't that amazing? If you can remain in like focused attention for a few minutes. This was declared by the Buddha himself. That's an analogy. The siddhas in the old days had a lot of lice. Now we can say this refers to a few minutes. Let's keep going. Part three, what is it called? Pith instructions for aspiring contemplatives, 21st century. So these are apparently assembled from teachings and instructions that he gave to Alan Wallace gave to practitioners who were doing long-term solitary retreat in his center in Colorado, southern Colorado, at Crestone, with the goal of achieving shamatha. I think there's three of these. Lamp for dispelling the five obscurations. Pith instructions for achieving shamatha in the Dzogchen tradition. So the five obscurations are a traditional early Buddhist scheme for the factors of mind that obscure meditative state. The meditative state. And they're different than the five obstacles to shamatha. There are these five things that really they're discussed in relation to a dhyana practice.
Is this what's also called hindrances?
These are normally called hindrances, that's right. And he trained early on in the Theravadan tradition in Sri Lanka for many years. And so he learned this whole system. So he has to draw. How much did Guru Samatha Bhadra? Samatha Bhadra is the primordial or Dharmakaya Buddha in the English tradition, embodiment of all refuges. In this degenerate age, cloaked by the darkness of ignorance and delusion, many are those who practice Vajrayana, including Mahamudra and Dzogchen, but rare are those who achieve the supreme and mundane cities. Many are those who cultivate immeasurable love and kindness and compassion, but rare are those who reach the sublime path of the Bodhisattvas. Many are those who practice mindfulness and introspection, but rare are those who truly achieve shamatha or vipassana. Since the mind resting in its natural state is the sound basis for the samadhis of vipassana, bodhicitta, and the vajrayana stages of generation and completion, here I shall share pith instructions for achieving shamatha by a direct method. Hold on one second. You. Here we have you, meditational conduct. When all space travelers, Dakineser, sky travelers, Dakines, we are all space travelers. As human beings, we move through what appears to be objective physical space, but contemporary physicists are challenging this belief, maintain instead that the three-dimensional reality we experience is actually a projection of a deeper dimension of reality, some maintaining that the latter is a realm of pure mathematical forms. A lot of brings in a lot of science stuff into this and his interesting views on the topic. Mathematical forms is like Plato. This resonates with the Abhidharma view of our experienced world, which is called the desire realm. For it is our desires that motivate us to move through this world. According to the Abhidharma, that dimension of existence emerges as a projection from a subtler, underlying form realm, from which archetypal forms of the elements, earth, water, fire, air, and space, manifest in the desire realm as physical congregations of solidity, fluidity, heat, motility, and space. At an even deeper level, the form realm is said to emerge from the formless realm, the subtlest dimension of conditioned existence, the domain of reality that we perceive with mental consciousness consisting of both physical and mental phenomena is known as the space of phenomena, the Dharma Dhatu. So the Dharma Dhatu being the entire realm that we perceive with our mind, mental consciousness. And this is one of the 18 elements of the phenomenal world. So it's one of the 18 dhatus. It is the object of the mind consciousness. So each, we have 6 senses, and each has 3 factors, where you have the sense faculty, the sense object, and the sense consciousness. And so he's saying the sense faculty is the mind, the sense consciousness is the mental consciousness that occurs in the 6 or 8 types, and the object of that is the Dharma Dhatu, which is a fancy way of saying everything, everywhere. One of the 18 elements. So when analyzed ontologically by way of the Madhyamaka view, it is found that just visual objects do not exist independently of visual perception. The visual perception does not exist independently of visual objects. Interdependence of subject and object, so are the spaces of phenomena and mental consciousness mutually interdependent. Neither member of the pair nor any of the remaining subject-object pairs among the 18 elements exists by any inherent nature of its own. Physicists have concluded that space is not a flat field. Some modern theories like loop, quantum gravity theory, first time I've heard of that, string theory we've all heard of, assert that it's rather composed of discrete, minute space quanta. Quanta are particles, right, or pieces, amounts, and this parallels the view expressed in the Kala Chakra Tantra that space is composed of space particles. This is like a dark matter, would that be called? Maybe. But this immediately presents a problem if those particles are assumed to be truly existent. For if 2 adjacent space particles touched, they would merge into one, and that would no longer be the smallest particle. But if they do not touch and are separated by an absolute vacuum, they could not interact in any way. Yeah, what is space? According to quantum cosmology, without introducing
That
an
sort of
observer time.
presupposes that space has mass and is solid.
Yeah. Wait, he's going to get much more into that. Yeah.
So, I mean,
Uh,
I'm totally lost on that because I mean, space is, I can put my hand through it, right? I'm doing that now. Um, how how is joining 2 pieces of this all of a sudden a bigger that?
Wait, it gets more confusing in the next paragraph. In other words, I have no answer for you, but to keep on reading. According to quantum cosmology, without introducing an observer, time would be frozen and the universe would be static. Wouldn't that be nice? We wouldn't get any older. We'd have the time to do all those things we want to do. It wouldn't like fly
Oops.
by the
Except static means no, you wouldn't have be able to do anything, right?
You wouldn't exist.
don't take it too
Half
seriously.
of it sounds good, but the other half not so sure about.
The universe can evolve and change only when one divides it into two parts, the subjective observer and the rest of the objective universe. Moreover, the wave function of the rest of the objective universe depends on the time measured by an observer. Thus, the nature of the myriad worlds is in the character of what each sentient being encounters every living moment. In actuality, it is neither inside nor outside, but prior to the very notion of a division between the two at all. While space is believed to consist of quanta, their existence is only nominal, that is, in a manner of speaking, and not objectively real. If space has only a conventional existence, it might seem to be inert and impotent. However, according to modern physics, space has its own energy called the zero-point energy, which is more primal and ubiquitous than the various forms of energy stored in matter. This energy is present throughout the universe, and some calculations estimate that it has an energy density of more than 10,110 times that of the radiant energy at the center of the sun, which corresponds to a mass density of about 10 to the 96th kilograms per cubic meter. So the energy of empty space is, in fact, the most powerful force in the physical universe. Based on the teachings of the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, which have been corroborated by many accomplished contemplatives who have verifiably recalled their own and others' past lives experiences. It's really cool to see Alan Moss, who's like brought up as this staunch Galupa, so utterly embraced the Enigma third turning view. Asanga affirmed the existence of a subtle continuum of individual mental consciousness called the substrate consciousness, Alaya Vijnana, which carries over from one lifetime to the next. However, according to Gardner, while it appears as if this mental continuum truly moves through space in the course of one lifetime as well as multiple lifetimes, this is an illusion. Just as space is unreal, this substrate consciousness has no inherent identity of its own, so what appears to be movement in space is nothing more than a shifting of appearances, as in a magical illusion, or in modern times, a 3D movie. In the context of Dzogchen, a distinction is made between the substrate alaya, in which all past life memories, visual propensities, and knowledge are stored, and the substrate consciousness, alaya vijnana, which is conscious of that substrate. It is into this subtle dimension of consciousness that the human mind repeatedly dissolves when one faints, falls into dreamless sleep, and dies. In those cases, one normally loses consciousness, but one can lucidly experience the substrate consciousness through the practice of shamatha. So this gets back to what Lama Karma was talking about in terms of experiencing the process of falling asleep and re-emerging in those three progressive stages of appearance, attainment, and full attainment. Let's see. Moreover, in Dzogchen, it is said that all phenomena of the three realms emerge from and dissolve back into one's individual substrate, which in turn has no inherent nature of its own. So instead of there being one objective universe experienced by myriad sentient beings, there is, so to speak, one universe for every sentient being. I like that. We each get our own universe. Yet all of these phenomenal worlds of existence are interrelated with those of others through countless past life actions, the propensities from which are stored in each being's substrate. All of the appearances that arise during the waking state, dreaming, and the transitional processes between life and the next emerge from, are present in, and eventually dissolve back into the space of the substrate, such as the creative power of the primal space of awareness. Quantum field theory asserts that all physical phenomena consist of excitations of the vacuum, much as surface waves in a pond are excitations of the pond's water. The vacuum in itself is shapeless, but it may assume specific shapes, and in so doing, it becomes a physical reality. Based on strong empirical evidence, many cosmologists have concluded that fluctuations in the quantum vacuum trigger the Big Bang, such as the power of the zero-point energy of physical space, which is itself a projection from the space of the substrate. Lest we reify either external or internal space, it is important to remember that a central tenet of quantum physics is that prior to and independent of the act of measurement or observation, all physical phenomena exist in a superposition state for which their ontological status is indeterminate, neither existent nor non-existent. Only when a measurement is conducted is the measured phenomena actualized as existent relative to that empirical and conceptual system of measurement. Likewise, according to the Madhyamaka view, no phenomena has any inherent nature of its own, but phenomena come into existence relative to a cognitive frame of reference, only in dependence upon conceptual designations of them. They are literally conceived into existence. Through the practice of shamatha, we penetrate through the highly configured non-physical human mind, which arises in dependence upon and in correlation with the functioning of the physical human brain, to the subtly configured non-physical substrate consciousness from which this human mind emerges during the process of gestation. Just kidding. Through the practice of Vipassana, we penetrate through the substrate to the absolute space of phenomena, the ultimate Dharma Dhatu, or emptiness. So shamatha brings us into the substrate, and Vipassana, with Vipassana, we penetrate through the substrate to the ultimate Dharma Dhatu. Then, through the Dzogchen practice of cutting through to the original purity, pristine awareness, we penetrate through the substrate consciousness to utterly unconfigured primordial consciousness, or the Dharmakaya, which naturally and timelessly illuminates the whole of reality. Now, I don't understand the difference between those last two sentences. It seems to describe the penetration through the substrate twice. It seemed like it happened once with Vipassana, then it happens again with the Dzogchen cutting through. And it doesn't seem to be a further progression. It just seems to be two ways of describing the same thing, or two alternate ways of doing the same thing. But it's unclear to me. When we become Vidyadharas, check your calendar, by the way, with the direct perception of our own identity as the primordial non-duality of the Dharma Dhatu and the Dharmakaya. We perceive all phenomena as empty of inherent nature and as manifesting only as creative displays of primordial consciousness, indivisible from the absolute space of phenomena and permeated by the infinite energy of primordial consciousness. Jnana Vaya, Vaya presumably meaning primordial. That which is the ultimate source of all other derivative forms of energy. That is the primordial space in which the Vidyadharas consciously dwell and through which they travel. And it is they who have fully realized their nature as Dakas and Dakinis. So there's coach, business class, first class, and Vidyadhara class. The meditation. So that was the view. I noticed that it made certain of you, like scientists, very uncomfortable. But he has a PhD in physics, so he's got it. He's got it right.
Yeah, not really. So it seems like the substrate is the alia, and you penetrate it, and he's saying that in that penetration you're entering basically the subatomic world of
Enlightenment.
energy and
Oh,
enlightenment. But he's linked. It seemed like At
Yeah,
first I
he
thought
did.
he was
Well,
trying to
he's
link,
talking about the creative power of a Buddha. It's like when you become
yeah,
enlightened, a Buddha, you have the power to manifest and to withdraw and to, totally manipulate the elements, the manifestation. So he's trying to like describe that in some way, that connection, I guess, between enlightened mind and manifestation. What specifically, Cyprian, where did he go wrong?
Well, just to point out, he has a PhD in religious studies and he has a BA in physics, but according to Wikipedia. But no, I think it's beautiful the way he is threading through the principles of the Dharma through some of these uh, topics in quantum physics. But I think the way he is doing it um, is from the perspective of a Dharma practitioner, and some of his statements about physics are not, I don't think are like the idea of superposition of phenomena, for example, is applicable in the scientific context to when you're looking at phenomena at that size. It's not a statement about phenomena kind of more broadly. So in that way, it's kind of metaphorical. And it's an example of something that you can kind of compare to the view of like, phenomena arising as we understand it in the Buddhist context. And I think it's interesting, but I don't think it's exactly the same. And there's a very specific way that it is described in physics. So some of these things seem to be more kind of like in interesting metaphorical connections rather than they are like this is clearly true because science says it's true, right? And the Dharma agrees, and they agree with each other, so therefore it's true. Like I feel like that's a little bridge too far than what is actually like uh asserted or substantiated by either of the disciplines per se. But that would just be my take on it. But that's not, I mean, it's not that it isn't compelling, I think, to bring those things into dialogue with each other, but I think it's a little, just goes a little too far.
with my BA in physics, I call that pseudoscience because I do the same thing. But I realize when I'm doing that, I'm creating metaphors. We cannot relate to the subatomic world. And in some ways, I've come further to the conclusion that a lot of the subatomic world is conceptual because we don't actually detect what's there. We're looking at the aspects, how it influences. Sounds like, but that's like saying something's red. It's not. Where is that physical particle? And some scientists they're called physicalists, say that a lot of this standard model subatomic, a lot of it is concepts. It's mathematical concepts,
Good. I'm
but
glad
they
glad
make
we
good
got some.
analogies.
Yes, good. I'm glad we got some conflicting views riled up. Okay, so should we dive into the meditation part in our remaining few minutes here? The bottom of 289, the initial indispensable preparation with practicable shamatha vipassana is to settle your body, speech, and mind in their natural states. For the body, the optimal meditation posture is to sit cross-legged with your back straight and your body relaxed, still and vigilant. Nevertheless, so relaxed and vigilant at the same time. Nevertheless, at first, to learn how to fully settle your body in its natural state, motionlessly rest your body in the Shavasana, which is the corpse posture, like a corpse in a charnel, relaxing all muscle in your body. In this posture, there are three kinds of balance to be achieved. So he recommends this here and there. It's interesting to see him like put it in there, like formally, like before you sit, you should do this. He studied yoga with some guy who, like, before he would teach him yoga, some very traditional Indian or something guy, before he would teach them yoga, he had them do shavasana for like 2 years or some ridiculous long period of time until they could actually relax every muscle in their body. So, three kinds of balance to achieve. Relax more and more deeply without losing the initial clarity of your mind. That's huge, right? Without falling asleep. Increase the stability of your mind without losing the sense of ease and relaxation. And then enhance the vividness of your awareness without losing your inner stability. That's very cool. So, distinguishing these qualities of stability and vividness, but cultivating these three main qualities of relaxation, stability, and vividness, which relate vaguely to the enthusiasm, the three traditional qualities of shamatha, of mindfulness here, stability and vividness is the introspective quality, the sheshan, awareness quality. And instead of enthusiasm or ardency, the Dzogchen tradition has relaxation. Interesting switch. Trungpa Rinpoche emphasized relaxation too, and many other Tibetan teachers switch that forceful quality into relaxation. On that basis, to settle the respiration, its natural rhythm, and the inner voice of the mind in its natural state of effortless silence. That's a good one. With your eyes open, rest your awareness in the space in front of you while maintaining just a peripheral awareness of the rhythm of the respiration. So just a light awareness of the respiration, maybe 25%. With each inhalation, focus your attention on the non-conceptual experience of consciousness in the present moment, by which thoughts are naturally blocked or arrested. So by focusing your attention on that object, it blocks other thoughts. With each exhalation, release any thoughts that arise into the space in front of you, thereby subduing the tendency for obsessive conceptualization. This is in accordance with the Pith Instructions of the Tibetan yogini Machik Labdrön, who was believed to be a reincarnation of Yeshe Tsogyal, the divine partner of Padmasambhava, as quoted by Panchen Losho Chökyi Gyaltsen, who was like the third or something Panchen Lama in the Gelugpa tradition. In his text, Highway of the Victorious One through Jina, is a root text on the Mahamudra, the precious God, and Kagyu lineages. So this is the root text for Mahamudra in the Gelugpa tradition. Tightly focused and loosely released, there is the mind's place of rest. Just a little bit more. In this way, maintain a continuous flow of non-conceptual, clear, and cognizant awareness while allowing the respiration to flow naturally and effortlessly, thus relaxing your body more and more deeply with each exhalation to protect your body's mind system from having too much energy build up in the upper body. Keep in mind Asanga's physiological observation. The movement of inhalation is downward and the movement of exhalation is upward. What an interesting statement. Some sort of somatic reference, right? Once you gain experiential understanding of the reference of this statement, what this statement means or refers to, you will know how to maintain balance and stability within your prana system, even as the vividness of awareness becomes more and more brilliant. So similar to the three kinds of balance to cultivate while in Shavasana, this idea of knowing how to work with the energies in your body and balance the different energies of the body. So a lot of emphasis on inner energies as the support for the experience and the mental faculties cultivated in shamatha. While being aware of them, do not primarily focus your attention on the tactile sensations correlated with the breath. So in some traditions of Buddhism, they focus on the tactile sensation, the feeling of the breath leaving and entering the nose, common practice in the so-called Theravada tradition. But you will likely reify them, and which may impede the uninhibited flow of the respiration. Allow the breath to flow as effortlessly as possible so that you're not reinforcing the sense of being an inherently existent agent who is breathing. Make a point of relaxing more and more deeply with each exhalation, relaxing, then allowing the next inhalation to occur effortlessly. Interesting way of expressing that, which is not far from our technique. In this way, your respiration will gradually settle in its natural rhythm, thus enabling blockages in the flow of prana through your nadis and chakras to release themselves. Immediately linking this process of working with the energies in shamatha to the working with the subtle body, which is the objective of tantric creation and completion stage practices, but is also achieved through shamatha practice. As Tirtan Lingpa advises, train in calming the movements of your respiration just until you do not notice them, thereby settling your speech in its natural state. For this book called Open Mind or something like that. What is it? Something like that, that he translates and writes lots of commentary in. That's a translation of text by Larab Linkpa, who's somehow related to Dujin Lin, of course. Open mind, view and meditation in the lineage of. As much as possible, continue to maintain this flow of non-conceptual awareness between sessions, mindfully allowing thoughts to arise, but not identifying with them or letting your awareness fuse with them. In this way, during formal sessions, your breathing will eventually become rhythmic, shallow, and virtually imperceptible, and the inner voice of your mind will come to rest in effortless silence like a lute on which the strings are cut. We've probably all heard that analogy before. The inner voice of your mind to be like the strings, like cutting the strings on a lute. Then you will be ready to devote yourself single-pointedly to settling your mind in its natural state during formal sessions. For this, rest in the sheer clarity and lucidity of your mind. Not sure exactly what the difference between those two are, but like the early morning sky in autumn, uncontaminated by dust, mist, or darkness, allows thoughts to rise repeatedly, but without being distracted by them or identifying with them. This itself is a direct path to resting your mind in its natural state and thereby to achieving shamatha. The first step in this path is to experientially distinguish between the stillness of awareness and the movements of the mind. Interesting that he's taken the what is normally three aspects of stillness, movement, and awareness, and said the stillness of awareness and the movements of the mind. Then you set out to accomplish the first of the four kinds of mindfulness, mindfulness in which you are continuously and simultaneously aware of the stillness and the movement. Simultaneously aware of the stillness and the movement, instead of distinguishing them first. Well, first he said to experientially distinguish between them, and then to accomplish the first stage, you're continuously and simultaneously aware of them together. As you deepen your familiarity with this union of stillness and movement, it becomes increasingly effortless, and the natural power of mindfulness manifests without your needing to observe strenuously as you did before. You thereby achieve the second mindfulness, manifest mindfulness. Let's stop with two. Comments, suggestions, questions, thoughts? Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a great week. See you again soon. Let's dedicate the merit. By this merit, may all
May all attain
attain
omniscience.
may defeat the enemy, wrongdoing from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence through the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of every dense wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Thank you, everyone. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Be well. See
Bye-bye.
you soon.